Well, Uncle Dan,
Hey.
and we talk about things like miracles on the show from time to time, and I think if you can do miracles, it's probably incumbent on you to do them. You should do them in times of crisis, but maybe you could just do PR.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I suppose that's a possibility.
Coulda is not the same as shoulda, so maybe what you need is just put a little English on that thing. Turn that frown upside down. Right,
the more
Doug?
ham-fisted and pointless, the better.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I have a nugget for you, dear uncles. I would say that perhaps the most succinct way to describe these last 4 interminable years is a crisis of leadership. No doubt, if we survive,
talking about this podcast?
If we survive this crisis, no doubt ink will be spilled by the barrel to put into words the scope and scale of this failure. As of this record, over 200,000 of our fellow Americans have perished at the hands of this crisis.
Oh, we're hurtling towards 300.
Yep, and the worldwide total is obviously far, far higher than that. Although there seems to be hope on the horizon, thousands of us are dying every single day. What makes this nightmare so much more unbearable is that it did not have to happen. Our leaders at nearly every level failed us, and we are paying the price. Those of us who live in red states have been failed even harder. Leaders all over the world, and here in America, from the White House to state houses to city halls, fucked this up 10 ways from Sunday.
Yeah.
But this failure has many fathers, and many leaders of many institutions have blood on their hands. With notable exceptions, the press has failed us, sports franchises have failed us, and of course, religions have failed us. It's truly an expression of how our leaders have failed that the NBA and fucking NASCAR are 2 of the only institutions that did it right.
Goddamn heroes is what they are.
Yeah, who knew? This failure has taken many forms, from the downright negligent homicide and intentional misinformation coming from the Trump administration to the myriad missed opportunities at providing solid leadership out of cowardice or fear of angering the great golden god. It's one of these missed opportunities I would like to talk about today. The vacuum of leadership at the national level has been vast, and although nature abhors a vacuum, it seems to really like dunces. Enter one Russell M. Nelson, President and CEO of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, formerly and soon to be known as the Mormon Church. Once Nelson
the once and future Mormon Church.
Exactly. Once Nelson kicks it and Dallin H. Oaks lays his bony hands on the reins, I'm sure we'll be back to the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
I got news for you. Literally nobody cared when he asked everybody to stop calling it that.
I know.
So
That's true.
It never stopped actually being the Mormon Church, including Mormons. Like, all of my Mormon friends still use all the terminology that he distinctly asked them not to.
Yeah, which may go against the theme of this segment, but here we go. Clothed with immense power over his millions of adherents and endowed with unimaginable wealth, and after a mere 9 months of the global pandemic, Nelson announced on November 13th, about 2 weeks ago, that he would be releasing a video message to address the crisis on November 20th. Why he needed to hype this announcement for 7 days is anyone's guess, especially when at least 1,000 Americans died each and every one of those days.
Well, he was thinking people probably needed to set their VCRs.
He's 94 years old, folks.
Yeah.
He's 96.
Is he?
Yep.
Well, he was 94 before.
2 years ago.
Fuck, how does that work?
There was quite a bit of speculation as to what would be the contents of this message on Mormon subreddits. Would Nelson finally admonish all Mormons to wear masks at all times outside the home? Would he command the millions of Mormons who hang on his every word to practice strict social distancing? Would he announce the... What's that?
He's a damn doctor.
He's a fucking doctor.
And we'll get to this. Would he announce the cancellation of all church services and all in-class learning at the 4 Mormon universities until the crisis was over? Would he announce that the church would dip into its $100 billion rainy day fund to help fund remote learning for America's children? Would he announce that the church's vast missionary network would lead the way in distributing the vaccine worldwide? Would he, at the very fucking least, admonish Mormons not to travel in the coming week for Thanksgiving, but stay home and mitigate the outbreak? Surely, any and all of those things would not only be well within the church's capabilities, but however belatedly, would have an actual tangible effect on the world, and would have the added benefit of garnering massive positive public attention for the Mormon Church. Well, if you really thought that this leader of this church was going to do something so self-evidently
whatever
positive,
it's called.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, whatever you want to call it, would do something so self-evidently positive and correct, welcome, new listener. You might consider becoming a patron.
Welcome, person from another planet who has never heard of Mormons.
You have stuff that we can teach you.
Yeah.
Russell's long-hyped 11-minute video was an exploration in the least he could do. Before we get into the content, or lack thereof, let's start off with the stagecraft. The majority of the video is an extreme close-up of Nelson's face under stark light. Now, I'm not being ageist, but Nelson is 96, and I hope to live that long. But if I do, one thing I can promise you is that I will not put my forehead against the camera on a Zoom call.
Listen, I do Zoom calls with my mother and her husband. Yes, you will. You will be way too stupid to know how to operate whatever it is that's pointing at you.
Yeah, his aesthetic can best be described as post-mortem.
Yeah,
I just got to say, though, I thought he looked like, considering that 90% of the time when I see a picture of him, he looks like the Crypt Keeper's like older, uglier brother. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought they did some movie magic to make him look as good as he looked.
They
Well-
did that thing they did in The Irishman. They
de-aged him.
de-aged him a century.
Well, for me, having his face so close to the camera gave me the disconcerting feeling that he was going to announce that we've always been at war with East Asia. The rest of the video are montages of Nelson hugging and shaking hands with one token member of every skin tone not represented in church leadership.
Well, do you remember at the beginning, Doug, though? He kind of did, he read his resume.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that, because it is interesting and I think somewhat damning. So the fact that in all these montages, however long ago they were filmed, Nelson was not practicing any form of social distancing is something we'll talk about. As for the content, I want to be fair. Nelson starts out, like you said, Uncle Mark, however vaguely, acknowledging the hard work of scientists in trying to curb the pandemic. And without saying the word mask, it at least showed someone putting a mask on for a fleeting second. He burnishes his own reputation by reminding us that he was, and this is true, a leading cardiovascular surgeon in the United States, a fact that, in my opinion, only makes what is to come all the more inexcusable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he tries to relate to those who have lost loved ones to this virus by talking about the death of his first wife to heart disease and two of his daughters to cancer.
Wow.
Fair enough.
Okay. I don't want to dance on anybody's grave here, but he is a cardiac surgeon. It seems like.
It's just fix her, goddammit.
Yeah.
Well, and so, that's fair enough. But again, intimacy with tragedy only makes what is to come worse.
Yeah.
Finally, Russell gets to the point, in the face of a global pandemic and at a time when the science has become very clear on how to prevent the spread of this thing, Nelson commands his flock to focus on the healing power of gratitude.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
He does get specifically pointless. Quote, I invite you, just for the next 7 days, to turn social media into your own personal gratitude journal. And he admonishes his followers to use the hashtag #GiveThanks.
Oh, my God.
If doing nothing is the least one can do, tweeting about it only ranks slightly higher.
And it's not even tweeting about anything of substance or meaning. It's
Right.
just ruining everybody else's feed.
Right.
That's all it was.
It's called doom scrolling, motherfucker. He then counsels everyone to thank God through daily prayer because, quote, prayer brings forth miracles, which, A, it most certainly does not, and B, we're supposed to express gratitude to the all-powerful being that just created this freaking virus in the first place and then watched it ravage his beloved children with cold indifference.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Now, having a positive attitude is never a bad thing, especially when facing the multifaceted catastrophe that is 2020. But this is thin gruel from leadership, and it's tantamount to the captain of the Titanic not charging for drinks after he hit the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's
know
not
what?
nothing.
It's not nothing. I would appreciate that. I'd be like, dude, you better give me an upgrade.
As all the wealthy people leave their first class cabins, the poor people move in for the.
He lets the poor people in.
The bartender is like, seriously, this is last call.
Yeah, it's not nothing. It ain't much, and it's not going to save any lives. So, were it only this ham-fisted and saccharine video, it would be bad enough. But we need to go back to the beginning of this whole nightmare to see how thoroughly the leadership of the Mormon Church specifically has failed its members. Again, to be fair, once this thing really set in March, the church did cancel in-person Sunday church meetings and then general conference, which led to one of the only good things to come out of the coronavirus, the Hosanna shout.
the socially distant Hosanna shout.
Oh, my God.
In a strange room in front of a mostly dead plant arrangement.
Yeah, all dancing to their own lack of rhythm. Yeah. As I've said before, there is not a peeing section.
Dance like 15 million people are watching worldwide.
Yeah,
exactly. But these cancellations were half measures, and a pandemic is not a time for half measures. As I've said before, there is not a peeing section in a public pool.
Right.
So once the science around social distancing and mask wearing became clear, Nelson could have mandated that all Mormons wear masks, and they would have. He could have tossed in a handy hashtag like hashtag Mormons wear masks. Oh, sorry. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wear masks.
Yeah.
See what you did to your fucking idiot.
I think there's a word limit in hashtags, isn't there?
He could have made Mormons examples to the rest of the country in their diligence to stop the spread of COVID-19, and they would have, but he didn't. He could have denounced the anti-mask rallies taking place in Mormon communities around the state that made national news, but he didn't.
Yeah, the state he resides in and where how many Utahns are active Mormons? At minimum half, right?
Oh yeah, like 55-60%.
He could have knocked this fucking curve. We're exploding.
We're exploding right now.
Yeah,
Utah
and
is,
it's going to get worse because we just had Thanksgiving and nobody did anything about it.
Yeah. He didn't tell people not to travel to Thanksgiving. I know. And as I said earlier, his resume and life experience make his failure even more acute. In his video, he called himself a, quote, man of science, not once, but twice. How much more egregious is it that he understands the science behind masks and social distancing and had the power to command millions of people to follow the science, and they would have, but he didn't?
I mean, yes, he was a doctor, but he's 96. Did they even have the germ theory of disease by the time he was practicing?
Yeah, he bled a lot of people.
Yeah, he was a leecher.
Yeah.
His familiarity
still is.
Yeah, true enough. His familiarity with personal loss should have made him all the more proactive in mandating the very things that would prevent others from facing that same loss, and they would have, but he didn't. Now, obviously Nelson is not alone in his failure to lead, but he is on a list that no person of conscience would be comfortable being on. Donald Trump, the highest political leader in the land, not only spread information, but the virus itself.
Yeah.
Conservative governors all over the country, including our own dim-witted Governor Herbert here in Utah, failed to take this seriously and only belatedly and begrudgingly did the right thing when it was almost certainly too late.
He is a man of such spectacular uselessness. I'm astonished.
But you know who beats him to the punch? Spencer Cox, our new governor, his former lieutenant. Yeah, we can pick him here. Add to that list of failures senators, representatives, mayors, pundits, and quote-unquote journalists. However, I think that religious leaders occupy a special place in all this fail. Their mandates carry the added weight of divinity to the billions who believe in them. And every religious leader from the Pope to Louis Farrakhan have failed their followers. I am sure there have been some religious leaders who have used their power to be proactive about COVID-19. I just couldn't find any.
Well, they were all Unitarian Universalists, and nobody goes to their church anyway.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
From Orthodox Jews to American evangelicals to Pentecostals to Mormons, the religious among us have been part of the biggest problem and remain, and now the Supreme Court has turbocharged them to remain part of the biggest problem during this horrible pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So our political institutions failed us, but we can change that. And thanks to all that is good, we did so about 2 weeks ago. But our religions failed us too, and they are not subject to democratic forces. They failed to predict the pandemic and failed to effectively lead their people through it. I think they got to go. However, I have no doubt that many will greet the vaccine not as a scientific breakthrough that it is, but as a divinely inspired miracle that will affirm their faith, and they will draw none of the correct conclusions from this utter failure. So,
the correct conclusions being that Jesus is fake, but Dolly Parton is very real.
it's very true.
Do you remember there was a one of the Americans who survived Ebola, and he was a doctor who'd gone to Africa with like an evangelical doctors group. I know it's a thing, but and there he was laying in his hospital bed, recovering from what is a hideous and horrible disease, right?
Yeah.
And standing around him, completely covered in like level 4 environment suits, are his medical team, and the press is like shooting through a plastic thing or whatever. And he says, first and foremost, I want to thank Jesus Christ for saving my life.
Jesus.
It's like, what are you talking about? If I was standing next to him, I'd be like, dude, I'm right here. What?
Maybe that was the name of his doctor.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Well, so even though there are vaccines on the horizon, we are absolutely entering what will perhaps be the worst part of this pandemic so far.
For sure.
And man of science, Russell M. Nelson, wants you to bask in the healing power of gratitude. So fine. I am grateful for all the hardworking, unsung scientists that work so hard to provide a possible end to this nightmare. And I'm grateful that these true heroes are more likely to listen to this podcast than they are to the empty, pointless platitudes of Russell M. Nelson. So,
yeah, I'm grateful, if I may. Hashtag give thanks. I give thanks for whichever of our New Zealand listeners will sponsor me to come out and quarantine for 2 weeks and then live in their country where I can record remotely and not have to deal with the bullshit around here.
Right, and where their leader, who is a former Mormon, an atheist, and a woman,
Yeah.
did more than every fucking leader in this country, religious, secular, political, otherwise, to contain
Get
this
me
thing.
out there, you hobbit bastards. I need this.
Well, and it should also be mentioned that we were raised, as young Mormons, we were raised to venerate the prophet.
Oh my God.
The prophet is the highest authority on earth. He
Bar
is
none.
Unquestionable.
second only to Jesus fucking Christ himself, right?
Literally.
And we are
MD.
told when we're 12 years old and a bunch of men put their meaty hands on your bad haircut and give you a tummy full of the Aaronic priesthood, that you can then go and make miracles, right? That's kind of what we're taught. So here is this guy. Here is, the king on the chessboard, or more likely the queen, because she actually does shit. And he is literally powerless. If there's a time for miracles, let's see it happen.
Yeah.
Let's do
It's
it.
here.
And
we have reached it.
You could have said at any point in this crisis, I want all Mormons to wear masks. I want all Mormons to stop listening to QAnon. I want all Mormons to take this seriously. And they would have, by and large. And we could have.
You say that, but I'm going to push back because that was my impulse too for the longest time. But when representatives of the church, not the first presidency, but like the area, like the people in charge of the area of Utah, said just those things, they were largely ignored. And the reason I think that they were ignored, and I think the reason why the church didn't take this stand, is because they figured out that what we have said before on this podcast, which is that there are now two religions for most of these people, and the one that's more important to them is Trumpism.
And that may be true, Dan, and they may have been afraid to find out how powerless they truly are.
Yeah.
But that's not an excuse for not trying.
Because
You're
we know
absolutely
that Mormonism is definitely hemmed in by that old religious chestnut, fuck around and find out.
Right.
But I think, Dan, there might be something to that they feel their grip slipping already, right? The young people are leaving faster than they can make them.
Yeah. Which is impressive because Mormons do make some young folk.
They making babies, and they are also, because of in-home church that has been happening during that, because the Mormons, to some credit, did stop having meetings, right?
For a while.
For a while. Now
they
they're back.
resumed.
They're back to it, but at least, unlike most American religions, they slowed the roll for a minute. But a lot of people were like, "Oh, you know what? This in-home church thing is better. Maybe we don't need to go back." So I think there's a panic spreading, perhaps, at Temple Square, and that Dan may have a real point there that they didn't want to say we all have to do this thing and then watch 20% of people do that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but here's the counterpoint to that. I think you're right, but what would have happened is 20% of their flock would have done the thing.
Oh, that doesn't change. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't change the fact that it was the right thing for them to do.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just
and
too
they would have been
chicken
borne
shit.
out. Like, if they'd listened to the medical science and pushed really hard, and some sizable percentage of Mormons said, "I don't want to do that." Well, they, at the end of what are only the last few days of his life, he could have looked back and said, "Well, at least I did the right thing."
Right.
But now you can't do that, Russell.
Yeah.
Rusty.
Yep. So thanks for the hashtag, dummy.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for ruining our feeds for 1 week.
Yeah, I'll put that over my fucking nose and mouth. That should work.
I hashtag give thanks that it's over.
Yeah, I saw a lot of ex-Mormons on Twitter were like, they felt very abused by the whole give thanks thing because it was it was a very performative thing for Mormons to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just said, just go away with this bullshit. So
Yeah,
there
put
you
on
go.
a mask.
Give thanks for nothing. That's what I say, Russell.
Let's get out of here.